Hi, my name is Jason Bernic, and I've been asked to speak to you today about a financial planner's approach to working with disabled clients. I've been working with financial planners since 2012, and whether working with individuals or groups, inevitably a large portion of the work that we do is around client engagement. Now, when you're engaging with disabled clients, it would really help to understand their mindset, the journey they are on, and the journey they've been through, to better establish rapport and deepen relationships, which will result in your doing better business with them and supporting them and their family. Now, naturally, from a coach's perspective, I'll look at your way of being, but I'll also look at your way of doing. In other words, my approach will be, how do you show up as a financial planner? And what do you do? Is your engagement process different? Can you have a differentiated value proposition or client engagement process when working with a disabled client? Do you need to employ more empathy? Do you need to change your language? What needs to be different, if anything? I'm also going to dive into the mindset, which I think is a great point of departure, because the more we understand about what they're going through and have been through and their fears and their challenges, the better a position you will be in to work with them. So let's depart with the fact that a disabled person never expected to be disabled. If we look at this from an insurance point of view, do you remember that life insurance has often been described as a grudge purchase? Insurance in general, because you're insuring against something that you hope will not happen. No one expects to die. No one expects to lose a limb or their eyesight. No one expects to get sick. So should it happen, it comes as a, and obviously I tone this down a lot, it comes as a surprise. And when the emergency of the situation is over and your client, the disabled person, comes out of it, there's a lot to come to terms with. They'll move through the phases of grief, as you may know them, starting with denial. Phases of bereavement is another way that it's described. There's a complete sense of overwhelm. Often, persons that are disabled that come out of it are described as being sedate for a long period of time, because there is the sense of denial around the fact that it happened, that it could happen, that it happened to them. And it may often take quite some time for them to move on to the next phase, which is anger. As they come to believe or accept that this has happened to them, they might get angry about circumstances. They used to be able to run. They can't run anymore. They used to have abilities like seeing or hearing, and they don't have those natural abilities anymore. We can understand how their reaction to the loss of what they used to have can result in anger. The phase that they might move into after that is one of blame. From denial to anger to blame. I blame the bus that hit me. I blame the person that invited me to that place. I blame the coronavirus. I blame my diet. I blame whoever it is, because it's easier to blame than to accept. It's easier to blame than to take stock of and to move on. Blame is a natural consequence of the previous phase. It's also one that they will move through. The next is bargaining, which is like an internal negotiation around what they want, what they could have, what they don't have. And this too could go on for some time until they move into the final phase of acceptance, where they finally, in one way or another, to some degree or another, come to terms with their current status, with their loss, with their inability to do, act, and be what they used to. Along with these phases come a mixed bag of fears. One of the initial ones is, well, what am I going to do? I used to do this, I can't do it anymore. I used to have a career, I used to own a business, I used to engage in these sports and these activities. I'm no longer able to do that. What will I do? What's next? How will I move on from here? Sometimes, how will I move? There are questions around how he or she will continue with life. Who will take care of them? Who will take them to the next step? Who will take over certain things that they used to do? This is akin with going to jail, except hopefully the disabled person will still have some control over their life. versus a person that's locked up for the rest of their lives. But the control may be less than manageable. They'll wonder what their level of function is. Function in their job, function in their home, function with their family, function in society. Will they be on crutches in a wheelchair? Will they be able to communicate? Will they be able to see, hear, taste and experience the world? At first they might not know this. There might be confusion around it, and it might take time for them to understand the limitations and degrees of their disability before they start to step up and enter back into the world as their new version of themselves, albeit with limited ability. It's a very, very confusing time. There is so much for them to come to terms with. Many disabled people will describe a loss of identity. They used to have their place in the world. They were of this vocation. They used to do these sports. They used to be a member of society, community, friendship circles, and family. They used to be seen to be this person that stands upright. And now they're another person that sits upright. They may see who they used to be and look upon who they are now and see themselves not as the person that sits within, but the person that other people see, which is just the physical. They'll wonder how people will react. People that know them reacting to who they are now, whether they look different or are different, because the disability can have an effect on their personality, especially when they have this waterfall of emotions that's cascading from one to the other. Sadness to anger. They feel helpless, a huge sense of helplessness. Suddenly from independent to reliant on other people. Sometimes many people, sometimes not just their spouse, but their entire family, sometimes nurses and other caregivers. They used to literally and figuratively stand up on their own 2 feet and own their world. Now they can't do it alone. To a large degree, often disabled people are reliant on help and care to get them through the day, to get them through the night, to get them through the week, the year, because they can't do it on their own anymore. They're often filled with regret of what was, what could have happened, what didn't happen, what happened. Regret that they crossed the road at that time, regret that they went on that trip, regret that they had a conversation with that person, regret that they were in a certain place at a certain time, regret that they did clever things or stupid things or whatever it was that led them to the disability. Regret that they ate the wrong food. Regret that they had the wrong nutrition and didn't do enough exercise. Whatever it is that supports, they're trying to work through something to come to terms with the disability. The regret can be managed and it can be taken from one point to the other. Sometimes they work through it and it leaves them forever. Sometimes it doesn't. It sits with them for the rest of their lives. There's an apprehension to go out there into the world and be once again. They used to do it as they used to be, but now they're going into the world as a new physical version of themselves. And they're going to wonder whether they'll be able to do it and what people will think. People they're familiar with, people that know them, and people that they meet. Because to them it'll be obvious that they have some kind of a disability. At least enough to be this effective that we're speaking about it. The sense of anxiety that they adopted post-disability may not ever leave them. Because the world wasn't designed for wheelchairs or crutches or people without sight or the ability to hear or the ability to speak. Like a left-handed person in a right-handed world, it's not easy. Imagine a physical disability, often as a result of everything they're experiencing or have experienced. Depression sets in. And they would do what they need to do around that. But often over time the depression escapes or is dealt with, and they start to resume activities, whether a new version of the old activities or new activities. They do enter back into the world, albeit in many cases in a different way. Disabled people don't want to be reduced to their disability. They've already been through this journey from denial to acceptance. And they don't need to be reminded of it all the time. They know that they might look different or be different or act different or walk different or show up differently. At this stage of acceptance, they're more than happy to talk about it. But what they don't want is strangers asking them what happened everywhere they go, because all that does to them is serve as a reminder of the accident, the occasion that led to them being disabled. And they don't want to go back to that place, not over and over and over, and be reminded of it. They don't want to be seen as disabled. They want to be seen as whoever they are. They have a name, they have a family, they have a place in the world, and that's who they want to be seen as and how they want to be seen. Not as that guy in the wheelchair, that woman with crutches, that person that can't hear. They just want to be seen, not by a definition and not by a disability. All right, so let's take a moment to check in where we are. We took a bit of time to understand the mindset of the disabled client and the journey they've been on so that we can approach them with more empathy and more knowledge and understanding, and hopefully build better rapport and have a deeper relationship with them and a more successful business relationship. Now we're going to go into the coaching approach. And to revisit what I said earlier is that coaching is a way of being. In fact, in my private client business, I coach people's ways of being. And what we're ultimately after is to shift that way of being, really looking at who they are and who they want to be, and having them move into that best version of themselves so that they can be who they want to be, to live the life they want to live and have what they want. That's the approach, really. So how does this play a role in your engagement process with a disabled person? We can look at it on a timeline. You may have an existing client that's recently become disabled, and you may meet a client that is disabled. Now, there's a variety of circumstances and situations, and we could play them all out, but I'm going to keep it really simple and look at a timeline of now, later, and much later. And I'll get back to that timeline in a minute. In terms of way of being, which is who you are and how you show up, how do you think that might be adjusted when working with someone that has been on this journey or through this journey? The first point I would like to make and would like you to consider is to just be there. Just be there. Especially if it's an existing client or a new client that's recently been through this experience. The last thing anyone needs in any situation of crisis or grief is someone coming and pushing product down their throat and talking about numbers and trying to sell them something. If you're in the situation because of an existing relationship, just be there. Be present. Listen. Answer questions. Ask relevant questions. Not questions that take away from the moment and interrupt the energy and the flow of whatever they are going through and need to go through. They being the disabled client and or the family. Be empathetic, because although you might not have experienced what they're experiencing, they are going through something significant. And whatever empathy means to you and how you show up with empathy will be felt and appreciated by the person and their family. Be responsive, not just to their questions, but to their needs. If they have you at the house or at the office or wherever the family is congregating, and there's a simple need like a cup of tea, respond to that. If the client is in a wheelchair and needs space to be made for him to wheel himself through, don't expect or hope that someone else is going to be doing it, because if you're part of the story that the client is on and you truly want to serve him, her, and the family and help and support, then you'll do something as simple as move a piece of furniture. Serving is not just about the numbers and the policies and the products and the investments. Serving is truly being there to help and support people through the crisis or the challenge that they have. What you do for a living, as a job, as a vocation, is the bonus on top of it. And this doesn't just apply to financial planning. This is a generic story. You just happen to be a financial planner that during this time happens to be there to help. The financial planning skill that you have will come into play at some stage on the aforementioned timeline and beyond. And maybe it has come into play already, which is why you're sitting there right now. Be patient. Patience is a virtue more than ever. When a person or a family is going through something, when there's a process to follow, when there are phases to go through, don't go in with an agenda. Don't push an idea. Be patient. You will know when it's time to step up and do what you need to do, whether it's directly with a product or service that you sell, or whether it's something that supports your clients in whatever way it can. Listen harder than you've ever listened. Listening is a client engagement skill. And if I were to talk to you about any of this outside of disability, I would say listen anyway. But more than ever, this is a time to listen and speak less. Because more than ever, this is a time where people and family have needs, and your talking and your agenda and whatever it is that sits behind that or follows on from that doesn't matter. What matters is that you're there, you're present, and you're listening harder than ever before. Picking up on what's going on, not just with the numbers and the policies and claims or whatever it might be, but listening to what's really going on emotionally, mentally. What the person and their family is going through. Because at the end of it all, you will be the person that is remembered. You will be the person that is called. You will be the person that was there. You will be spoken about because other people weren't there. If you're going to approach this from an authentic point of view, in other words, be present, for the sake, not just for the sake of being present, but because you really, truly, wholeheartedly care, it will be felt and it will be remembered. And you will be referred. Again, not because you have a skill, which you do, but because of who you are and how you showed up. Answer questions. Be factual, be informative. When there's emotion that surrounds the questions, the situation, the people, the scenario, you don't need to envelop the question or the answer to the question with anything. Nothing has to be exaggerated or embellished. You have to shoot straight. Question, answer. Factual and informative. What people want during these times is answers. They don't want stories. Stories come at other times. What they want is answers. And following answers, and we'll look at the timeline soon, they're going to want action. Question, answer, action. Give them space. And when I say them, I mean everyone. Give them space. You're present, you're listening, you're asking some questions, you're answering their questions. But present doesn't mean you have to be there in the middle of it all. You don't need to be one of the direct family members. You just need to be there, but give them space. They could be having their family meeting in the lounge. You could be standing outside on your cell phone dealing with clients, but you're there. Create physical, emotional, and mental space between you, your client, and their family. I often speak about serving versus selling. Serving versus anything. And in any profession or industry, if the approach of the representative is one of serving, not of selling, it is so much more true and supportive and honest than any other way of approaching, because they are truly there to help and support from the right place. the questions would be, how can I support you? You'd use that actual word. How can I help? What can I do? To come from that place is more genuine. To ask questions in help, love, and support is more genuine than talking about product or talking about financial planning or just talking. Support also means allowing your client to adjust to changed or changing circumstances. Earlier I spoke about the 5 phases of grief. These may often take weeks, more than weeks, months, even years, as they move through their own mental and emotional phases. So too do they experience phases in environment and people. People come and go. Financial advisors come and go, often go in these circumstances, even if there's a claim. As they adjust to changes in behavior, changes in ability, changes in job, career, family, mobility, allow them to do that. There's a lot going on, and there will be a lot going on from now, up until now, and forever into the future. Because again, he or she is now a disabled person living in a world that was designed for abled people. Right, so that was looking at your way of being and how you show up with a disabled client. Now let's go back to the timeline and look at the doing. Way of being, way of doing. What you can practically do at each phase of our financial planning timeline that is in support of a client that is disabled or has recently become disabled. So beginning with the right now, what can we do right now? Check in on the way of being all the time. If you've taken notes, go back to those notes and just see how do I want to show up? But then what do I do when I'm there? Because I can't just sit there or be on my cell phone outside and be empathetic and listening. You know, there's got to be more than that. And there is, absolutely, there's more than that. Now, we can talk a lot about who you are and your presence and what you should say and not say and all of that. But of course, as a financial planner, there's still the practical element to it all. Because you can be there with them, you can be present or outside on your cell phone talking to clients or working on your laptop. But you still have the job of a financial planner and you still need to do it. So hopping back onto that timeline and having a look at the right now, what can you do right now? Because you're there in the right now, which is the closest moment to the point of disability, it's probably an existing client. So your responsibility to deliver on your promises kicks in immediately. You need to understand what has happened, the nature of the disability, the definition of the disability relative to the insurance product that they have. And you need to swiftly and timeously and with care execute the claim. And it needs to be as seamless as possible so that it's easy for the family. They don't have to think much about it. They don't have to worry or be concerned about it, ask too many questions, or try too hard to be in contact with you in your office. It should just happen. All of the intrinsic features of whatever they have should be considered. Waiting periods, lump sum, income. At some point, the family might ask the question. You don't want to go in too early and put the information forward when they're dealing with something else, so check in, ask permission. Position it, ask if it's the right time. Ask who you need to speak with, when you can speak, how you can speak. Will it be a family forum? As I'm speaking to you, we're still in level 3 lockdown, so would it be a Zoom call to round everyone up? Would it be a case of rounding people up, or would it be one-on-one or one-on-one with close family alongside? When will it be? How will it be? What will it be? What is your job right now post-disability event? There's documentation, there are claim forms, there are signatures required. There's communication required between you, the family, the insurance company, you, the insurance company. Unfortunately, there's administration to be taken care of because that's unavoidable. And you need to be in the thick of it, in control of it, handling it, so that the responsibility And the uncertainty around it is taken away from the family and left in very good, capable, and supportive hands. Now, you may have a client that doesn't have disability insurance. You may meet a client that's been recently disabled and doesn't have disability insurance. Your responsibility around that is very different. You're not immediately going to kick into the administrative phase that you would otherwise around a claim. You're going to look for other ways of supporting them. Existing client or new client, it doesn't matter. If you are committed to this person, if you have made some kind of commitment and are there to serve, I'm taking money out of this equation completely. It's about financial planning and a willingness and a love for and a need to serve clients. If there's no insurance, then your objective and the way that you pursue that objective is going to be different. You're going to go about it in a different way. You're going to look for money. You're going to look for other ways of funding differences or gaps. Maybe money can move around. Maybe there's a policy that wasn't necessarily taken out for disability, but it can be used to assist with disability and the expenses that come alongside with it. Right, so over to phase 2 of the very simple timeline that I've created, which is later. Phase 1 was right now, phase 2 is later. I'm not attaching dates or times to this timeline. I'm calling it a timeline, but I'm not giving you actual times because every person will experience a different timeline, and depending on the severity of their disability, the timelines could be extraordinarily different, from months to years. But the later phase will be around supporting them to make adjustments to their lives, adjustments to their lifestyle, adjustments that inevitably have something to do with money. In many cases, being the middle part of this timeline, these adjustments are practical. They are alterations or renovations to the home. They could be an adjustment or a modification to the car. They could be the purchase of equipment that supports and aids the client. Wheelchair, crutches, hearing aids. Some of these things involve money, and if it involves money, it's very likely that it has to do with you, because you can look for ways and means to create the money or to move money around. But sometimes it doesn't. And some of the best financial planning relationships demonstrate their depth of value through the work that the financial planner does when it doesn't involve money. The client's paid his fees, the commissions have been paid, the asset management fees are still being paid. This is really assistance. And the insurance industry through which I entered a long time ago used to always tell us that the real job begins when there's a claim. And I've always understood that, because that's when you show up and do what you need to do to truly help. In the beginning, it's just a plan. But like saving for retirement versus retiring are two very different things. So taking out insurance versus claiming for or against an event and needing the insurance are two very different things. So this phase is when the client and or the family will need you to not only work with the money, but to assist them in many different things. You've probably had a lot of experience in dealing with claims and dealing with the emotions and the challenges that disabled clients have. Where do they go? Where do they get things? How does it work? Is there a manual I can read to understand where to get that car modification? Do I just Google it? You've had the experience. If you haven't, you know where to find the answers. And then, much later, we've dealt with the claims, we've dealt with practical modifications, conversions, adjustments. The client has been through much of their journey, dealt with a lot that they need to deal with, and many practical steps and support mechanisms have been put into place. So what's next? Next is less about looking at what's in front of you right now. You being you, the client, and whatever's going on right now, and more about, as you would have done on the financial planning journey without the disability event, looking forward into the future and planning. Much later on this timeline is about taking stock of where the client is in terms of their current circumstances, current reality, their monetary affairs, their F&A once again, understanding what that picture looks like, which is now probably very different to what it was a number of months ago, where you were at the beginning of the timeline and dealing with the disability, and looking forward and planning and setting those goals and the strategies in pursuit of those goals once again. So what do we have left? There have been some claims. What's in place? What needs to be in place? What about money? We've moved some around. Some came from claims. Income may have stopped or lessened. Where is income from? Is there income? The last phase of this, the much later phase, where we are right now, is very much the planning phase. We planned before. This is why you're part of this relationship, because there was a plan. You entered into a relationship with a client, and playing your role in that relationship was, on the one hand, being there, being supportive, but on the other hand, being very practical and assisting them with money and some peripheries. But now you're back at the planning phase because all of those adjustments have been made. So it's back to, okay, where are we? Where do we need to be? Let me help you to get there. It's a financial planning full circle. Unlike short-term insurance, where it's very simple, something breaks or gets taken, and you claim and you get paid out for that claim. The difference is that this is life-changing. Life-changing. If a computer is stolen, it's not life-changing. This is possibly the most emotional experience that your client could ever have. It's different to death because death is final. Disability is ongoing. So from a financial planning or a financial planner's perspective, you entered into this relationship, you've run full circle with the clients, and now you're back to planning with the ongoing empathy and support and emotional presence. You follow what I'm talking about by approaching the client engagement process, the relationship, the rapport, by considering your way of being as well as your doing. You will have an incredibly successful relationship with not only the disabled person, but all of the other support that they have, family, friends, acquaintances. You will get ongoing business, you will be referred, and you will build a successful practice. Not just because you did it with them, but because this is your new way of being. This is who you are, this is how you practice, this is how you run your business. Good luck. I hope that you don't have any disabled clients. But if you do, I hope that this time that we've spent together is incredibly useful to you. All the best.